Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Class E podcast. I am your host, Mary Sturgill. As you well know, this is the podcast that's brought to you through a partnership between the Hill Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship and the Communication Studies Department here at Furman University. Our hope with these podcasts is to share the story of innovative and entrepreneurial thinkers in hopes of inspiring you. And today we welcome serial entrepreneur and thought leader with over 30 years experience in that space. Fred Cary has created transformational strategies that have resulted in billions of dollars in corporate value. And these stories cross boundaries. He's built high growth business in finance and software, mobile technologies, data, retail, consumer products, and e-commerce, and probably a lot more. Through all of that, he's acquired, of course, thousands of lessons along the way that he is now going to share with us. And he's sharing in his latest venture, Idea Pros, which is an entrepreneurial startup services company. Fred, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. I'm not sure I'm gonna share thousands of lessons, but we'll hit some of the big ones.
We'll share what we can in the time we have.
Yeah.
So you have just to give everybody a little bit of background on you, you have a background in law with the Thomas Jefferson School of Law and Harvard, and you have an MBA in business from the University of Liverpool. But I suspect that your history with entrepreneurship started kind of way before you did any of that stuff. What sparked innovation and entrepreneurship for you?
The fact that I didn't fit the mold. I always felt kind of like an outsider from the way that my childhood and teenage friends approach what they thought was going to be their adult life, and the way that I did it. I was always all over the place, and I was always thinking about how to do things the different way, in a more unusual way than my friends were. So that's really, by 21, I knew I could never work for anybody else. So
you knew at that point that you were just going to create whatever you needed to create at that point in time to work for yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We've listed briefly some of the ventures that you've had. What I'd like you to do, just to give everybody a little bit of background, can you go take us through some of those just briefly, maybe your favorites, and briefly talk about what they are and where you took them?
My favorite companies?
Yes. Yeah.
Historically? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think one of my favorites was Boxlot. And the reason for that is it was a company that was going to be a disaster. We started in 1998, and we were chasing eBay. eBay was literally a year ahead of us with their app and their website mostly at that point. And we just couldn't catch up. We had an auction website. We did better auctions than they did, much finer quality things than they did. And we ended up being just that distant second when we couldn't change. We had a lot of money that had already been invested in us, and it was time to either shut the doors down or figure something else out. And we had to make a really, really big pivot. I don't like quitting. And so our pivot became, let's be a technology company. Mm-hmm. The reason was a lot of the underlying technology needed for auctions, reverse bidding, bidder buy, accepting multiple bids, automated bidding increments, a lot of that technology didn't exist. And so we turned ourselves into a technology company and re-sparked everything. And all the biggest companies in the world started using our technology. And we ended up getting an agreement 18 months later for a $125 million acquisition of our company, where it was something that should have been in the ashes. So yeah. I think that's a good one for me.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. Another one's Imagine Communications. When HD first started penetrating American households, the cable industry was in really bad shape because the cable that would go to the home would only support 1 megabit of data, and they needed back then 1.5 megabits to deliver an HD signal. And so it was going to be disaster for the cable industry. we came up with a technology that we approached the cable companies with our proposed technology, and they said, if you can make it, we'll buy it. And my engineers said, you're crazy, we can't make it. But we did. 9 months later, we came up with a technology that stood in different residential communities that actually took their infrastructure, and we quadrupled their throughput. So instead of only being able to handle one standard definition signal, they were able to deliver 2 HD and 1 standard using all the same infrastructure they had in place. So that company now, Imagine Communications, does probably $750 million a year in revenue. And, you know, it started from an idea that couldn't happen.
Right. That people thought just wasn't possible at the time. Yeah. That's amazing. And then what would be your third one?
Well, my third one's Idea Pros, the company that I'm with right now. It's the hardest, even though I brought a couple of companies public, this is the hardest I've ever worked, really. And it's because we become the co-founder with entrepreneurs, and it's expensive to work with us. It's not cheap at all, but the entrepreneurs that were about ready to go out and spend $100, $200, $300, $500,000 to build an app, build a company, you know, do all the engineering for physical products. We approach them, or they approach us most likely, to be their co-founder, and they will pay us an upfront fee, a fixed fee of around $100,000, and they give us 30% of the company we're going to form together. But then we do everything. We do all the heavy lifting, from, you know, research, competitive analysis, customer profiling, branding, naming, positioning, development of the website, development of the app, development of the physical product, through engineering, and all the way through marketing, and then launching, and while we're training the entrepreneur how to really be experienced in a year period of time. So that's been very, very fruitful. I've had 100,000 applications in the last 2 years. We've taken 400 companies, and we have about 24 of them that we think are going to be worth around $100 million each. So, you know, $2.4 billion worth of value right there. So that's been very rewarding and very stressful at the same time.
Yeah, I bet so, because I mean, I know, and you probably experienced this in your own journey, that, you know, you have this great idea, but sometimes, a lot of times, you don't necessarily have the skills that it takes to make that idea into a company, or a viable company, right? And you guys seem like you're providing that for some of the idea people.
You know, when I was a kid, the rich people were the doctors and lawyers and the business owners down the street, and then the movie stars and the athletes. Now, when people think about wealth, they think about entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
And when you have social media, it makes it look easy. But if you look at the underlying data, literally 94% of the multimillionaires and billionaires that are entrepreneurs went to really great schools. Over 60% of them got advanced degrees from those schools. They know how to be an insider. They know how to play that insider game. And the rest of us, the 95% of us, including me, we were all outsiders. And we don't know the rules. We don't have the connections. We don't know what we're supposed to build. And that's why the biggest cause of failure for new companies in America is that entrepreneurs build something there's no demand for. How crazy is that? You'd think the number one thing would be not enough money. The number one thing is you build something that nobody wants. Not your mother won't even buy it. And that's really devastating to think all those dreams crushed. And so we started Idea Pros to really turn those outsiders into insiders.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say, is you're taking those outsiders and giving them the path to get on the inside.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that. So, can you talk about a couple of the companies that you're working with?
Yeah, and I have to be careful because some of them are just launching and semi-secret mode. But we have one company that is, it's an app company. It's basically, if you think of it as Uber for the construction industry, and it's called Grunt. You can find them at trygrunt.com. And basically, what it is this founder came from the construction industry. They're always breaking tools, running out of supplies, and they need to go off the job site, and then you waste a day, waste a couple of days, and a couple of people that are going out there for hours. And with Grunt, you can place an orders for whatever you want. Grunt drivers pick it up, deliver it to your site within an hour, and in some cases two, depending on how many places they need to go to. And so it really solves a major problem for the industry. On top of that, we're trying to make Grunt drivers sexy. You know, I can't tell you the number of guys in their 20s or 30s that probably hate delivering groceries to grandma at 8 o'clock at night. You know, it's not a very compelling side hustle. Be able to tell your girlfriend you're going to go out and pick up some lumber, and that's part of what you do in the first place. You know, we want to make it like the UPS. When UPS first started coming out, their drivers with the sexy shorts and everything was a big spin on things. And so we're doing the same thing with Grunt to try to make it a side hustle that you can be proud of doing if you fit that profile.
Yeah, and that's actually, I agree, that's so much needed. I volunteered for Habitat for Humanity, and it was my job to get that project, get all the materials we needed for whatever project on site, and it does take a lot of time away if you're not prepared for that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Anything can happen. You get there, and then it's the wrong
Absolutely.
Part, right? Yeah. So it's we're going to do really, really well with that. There's another one that talking about kind of Habitat for Humanity and things like that. There's another one called Exhale. And Exhale is a web-based solution. Our partner has been in healthcare for many years, and she's dealt with people with lung issues. And insurance companies only cover you when you get to stage 4 of lung disease, which is insane to me. It's like, okay, we're going to help you die.
Right.
And stages 1, 2, and 3 is where people really, really need the help, and it's covered. So we built this company called Exhale. It's all hundreds of videos, advice on how to eat, how to sleep, the types of exercises you do. You have groups, you put it all together. And she's launched, she's doing really, really well. There's a lot of doctor groups that are signing up with her. She actually got picked to be on the board of the national board of directors for the American Lung Association because of this work. So that's been a really noble work that's really, really taking off. So I think that's another good example.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the criteria that you look for? Because I'm sure some people have come to you, they've had the money, but you've done your due diligence, and you look at them and you just don't think this is viable. What are some of the things that you're looking for?
You know, I was the first person doing this, and so I made a ton of mistakes, speaking of thousands of lessons. When we first started, we were really mostly interested in the idea, and of course the capital. You had to contribute, or my model doesn't work. If you don't have skin in the game, you're not as motivated as if you do. That's one lesson that I learned historically. So now the entrepreneur is actually even more important than the idea, because we can take an idea, as long as it's a decent idea, we can take it and we can massage it and we can turn it into a great idea. But you can't turn somebody into a great entrepreneur if they don't have the heart, if they don't have the grit, the determination, if they're not able to accept failure as a step towards success. If you don't have those things, you're not going to make it, no matter how great of an idea we turn this into. So ultimately, obviously, you got to be able to fit the financial profile, but then the very next step is, are you somebody who's not going to quit? And if you've got those two things going, now let's take a look at your idea and let's see what that real market need is, and whether or not this thing can go in and become a dominant player in that space. Those are the things that we look for in that order. What's
one of the problems that you wish that you discovered in any of your processes and any of your companies that you wish someone had told you beforehand?
Well, I think the most obvious one is things never work out the way you intend, and everything's going to take twice as long and cost twice as much, and that's just the way it is, you know. And we as entrepreneurs, we look at things and we see that there's a real need, and we believe that the world is going to come running towards us with this new great solution, and it's really, really a long process. I mean, if you look, everybody talks about Elon Musk and and Tesla and everything. Well, number one, he wasn't the founder of Tesla. So
Exactly.
two other guys that did it. But number two, the first electric car, 1890.
Right. Yeah.
1890. And
I literally just read that the other day.
oh, you did?
Yeah.
I got my facts.
Yeah.
So the reality is that things take a long time, and just because you're first doesn't mean you're ever going to make it. And sometimes I think this second lesson I learned is sometimes it's good not to be first. If you're second, third, fourth, you're making something, but you're making it better because you've had the first ones go in there and crash and burn and try to do things but not do it well, and now you have a market demand, you have people who have penetrated the market, you have customers that are screaming about that 1-star component of the solution, and you can make that 1-star thing your 5-star thing. So I would say don't be afraid of competition, and understand that things take a really long time, so don't be afraid of failure either.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, and correct me if I'm wrong because you probably know more about this world than I do, but I think venture capitalists sometimes look at the competition aspect of it. Is there competition in the marketplace already? And that kind of almost contradicts what you just said about it's okay to be the second or third company.
Yeah, well, then if they were worried about that, they would have never taken HelloFresh after Blue Apron, or
Right.
Lyft after Uber. There's always room for more than one. And if you look at, for example, the food delivery apps, there are at least a half dozen of ones that are doing really, really well.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, venture capital. There's no venture capital firm that would give a dime to Quicken. When Quicken first started, he literally went door to door to every venture capitalist in Silicon Valley. Not over 240 of them, not one would give him a penny. They thought it was a stupid idea. And of course, after he really started kicking butt, everybody wanted to give him money at that point.
Of course. Yeah.
One thing you have to understand, your audience needs to understand about venture capital or any other type of investor, they don't know everything. A lot of times they haven't even ever started their own company. Some of them are just finance people, bankers, and they are theoretically inclined as opposed to being able to really find that target market and understand that there's an opportunity. So don't be discouraged. If you can't find money in one place, go find it somewhere else, because eventually you'll get it. But yeah, venture kit. To me, somebody comes in right away and says, "Hey, I have no competition." It's awesome. If you have no competition, there's no demand, right? Because competition fills a demand that's generated by consumers or whoever that ultimate customer is. And if there's no demand, and you're doing something that's so revolutionary that you have to actually build a demand where none existed before, then that's billions of dollars probably to get there. I mean, people, I use the example of the first car. Somebody could argue that there was no competition when the first car came out, but the competition was horses. The issue was transportation, and so that demand was there to be transported. You just had a different way of transporting people, and you had to compete against that horse in the beginning. Cars that were actually slower in some cases than horse and buggies. So there's always competition, and if there isn't, you're going to be one of those that failed because you created something that there is no demand for.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Let's see. Do you have, and I kind of feel like you do, just from our conversation, do you have kind of an entrepreneurial, like a philosophy of entrepreneurism?
Well, my first philosophy is don't.
That's what everybody says.
Because it is, look, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you need to understand that it's a lifelong struggle, no matter how far along you get. I mean, Elon Musk with SpaceX, he was one rocket failure away from losing everything that he had after he'd already had a couple of successes. Right, a big payday with PayPal, and yet still having those issues, problems with Tesla, problems with Twitter. There are always fires, and if you're not comfortable wearing a fire suit, you shouldn't be an entrepreneur. But if you are, then I think for me, the kind of mantra for entrepreneurship is be comfortable with pain, because you know that in the end, you can help a whole lot of people. Whatever it is that you're doing, if you're doing it for the right reason, with the right purpose, the right determination, that you're potentially a world changer. And you can't change the world without hurting yourself. And as long as you're willing to do that and do things for the greater good, you're going to be able to make it no matter what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I think that's a great mindset to be in, because I think you're going to be more prosperous if you're in the mindset that I'm doing a greater good rather than I'm going to make money. Right?
Yeah.
The money's going to come.
Yeah. Yeah. And I say that all the time too. Don't chase the money, chase your dream, make it a reality. And as long as you have your dream and be really strategic about how you take that dream and actualize it, when you can actualize your dream, the money will follow. It's as simple as that, because doing it the right way, doing the research, understanding what the real need is, and being able to deliver on that need results in capital coming your way. But when you're focused instead on the dollar, you end up being like the Enrons of the world, where no matter how big you get, the corruption of chasing the dollar can take you down really, really hard.
You know, a lot of people create business ventures. Obviously, we've talked about that they're not always successful. Is there an other piece of information that you're thinking, or advice maybe that you're thinking, that people need to understand or know that they might not know?
We don't know anything when we start a business. You know, when I talk about that, literally the way that we approach entrepreneurship, nobody would do that in something like sports. Like, can you imagine if I wanted to hire you as my coach for a sports team, and you're asking me like, hey, well, what sport is it? And I tell you, I don't know. For the competitors, I don't have any clue, but I think I'm the only one. And well, how big is this sport? I don't know. What are the rules? I don't know. How do you get all the spectators to root for you? I don't have a clue, right? But that's how we go into entrepreneurship. We don't know the market. We don't know the market size. We don't know the growth. We don't know the holes in the market that we can exploit. We don't know what those personas really want and how to take them not only as customers, but as passionate advocates of our brand. So what I would say to our entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs, you need to do your homework. Think about it, that you're a coach of a sports team. Do you know all the rules? Do you know all the competitors? Do you know how to win? And if you don't know those things, you gotta get them. You know, I have on my website a free resource. It's called the Insider Checklist, and and you can just go to ideapros.com and download it. As I said, it's absolutely free, and it gives you 7 points, seven highlights of the things you need to consider when you're starting any business. And then on top of that, for the next 7 days, you get an email from me, and each day that email will cover one of those 7 points and cover it in a lot greater detail. And there's an embedded 20-minute or so video on that subject from me. And so by the end of the 7th day, you'll not only know all those 7 points, but you really get in-depth knowledge about them. They're critical foundation for anything that you want to do as an entrepreneur.
Do you recommend that people do that before they approach you as far as becoming partners with you?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you need to understand what it's all about. If somebody wants to be my partner, I would definitely suggest going through those things first. And you know, one of the things that we did, Idea Pros ended up becoming drinking out of a fire hose. That you know, there was just so much incredible demand. And I only had this one all-in solution. But now we have a lot of things that are really inexpensive. I have master classes on purpose-driven entrepreneurship. We have, I think for $1,800, we have a program that will take your idea and completely, everything I said about the market research and everything, will completely dissect that idea, look at all these things you need to be looking at, give you back about a 40-page report on exactly what that market is, how you should exploit it, who your personas are, and how to go out and raise the capital you're going to need to go further up that food chain. So we do have a whole lot of things. You know, if any of your audience wants to reach me or learn more, they can. My executive assistant is not in the room because she always kills me when I say this, but write to me directly at fred@ideapros.com, and I'm happy to kind of steer anybody where they need to go.
Yeah, and you can check that out on Fred's website as well, ideapros.com. Fred, you talked about the videos a little bit. Am I mistaken? Don't you have a TV show like on YouTube?
We actually have a TV show coming up. It's not out there yet, but I do have over 500,000 followers on Instagram, and I provide advice on personal development, entrepreneurship every single day. I encourage people to go there. It's official Fred Cary, Cary, and that is. I put my heart into that. I never have a script. I never have bullet points. I never know what the heck I'm going to be saying. I'll just start talking, and I'll put it down there. But I think you can spend a minute a day on just going and seeing what I'm saying today. It'll give you a good foundation to be a better person and be a better leader.
Yeah. That's how important do you think social media is now in for startups?
For a startup, well, most startups, it's critical. Your persona is represented digitally nowadays. You don't have a real storefront, you have digital storefronts. And everything that you do is measured by what is seen online, whether it's your website, whether it's your blog posts, whether it's your LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook or YouTube channels. Everything you do is what you're being measured by. And so if people look at you, let's suppose you're a web development company and you go to your website doesn't look great, or you have that copyright 2021 on there instead of 2023, these little things, that's how people would look at you in the real world before. And so social media, in the sense that it is addressing your customer base, it's critically important. You always want to have what you believe is your persona is the clear representation of your company, and your belief system is projected in everything that you do online.
When you say persona, you're talking about brand?
Yeah. Your brand. People think your brand is what you write down. Your brand is what your customers think of you. And so you can say your brand is this or that or whatever it is, and write it on all the walls in your office and make every employee chant it when they walk in the morning, but that's not your brand. Your brand is how you're perceived by your public, by your audience, by your customers. That's what your brand is. So that's why it's so important on social media and otherwise. And every engagement with your audience, it's really important that what you want your brand to be is projected in such a way that your audience believes it as well.
Yeah, I just finished ghostwriting a book for a local businessman, and so I'm totally stealing this from him.
Let's tell his name. So
I'm not sure he wants me to, but I'll ask him first. But he says perception is reality. So it's going along with exactly what you're saying, that how your audience or your customer base perceives you, or the community that you're in perceives you, is the reality of the situation.
Yeah. And no matter what you want that to be, you're never going to get unanimity. You're never going to get 100% people buying into it. I mean, even in what I do, but look at venture capital. Venture capital, 90% of their bets fail.
Right.
I'm trying to make my percentages way higher than that. But even so, let's suppose I have a 25% failure rate. That means 25% of my clients, my customers, my partners probably think Fred's can I say a dick? They don't feel that highly of me because their dreams have not been able to be met. So trying to manage your brand essence is very difficult when you can never make everybody happy. So you really have to make sure that what you're doing affects the most people, so you can carry. There's a lot of people who don't like Apple, but their brand is very, very powerful, and their brand, they do that in everything they do. They start with their why, as much greater speakers than I did a really good review on. But they start with their why and everything that they do, and at the end is we just happen to sell iPhones and computers, but that's the last part of the statement. They don't lead with that. They lead with the essence of being different, of thinking differently, of creating unusual things. And you can see how powerful their brand is, because if I told you that I just heard that tomorrow Apple is releasing its first ever electric toothbrush, I wouldn't have to say another word. Right. And by the way, not true at all. But you would already know it's going to be sleek. It's going to have Bluetooth. It's going to tell you whether you're brushing right. It's going to crash and break into little pieces,
right?
Because other stuff does. But you're going to know the essence of what this thing. You have it, and you're imagining it in your head because they've done such a great job of creating their brand imagery for you, and that's what you need to strive for.
Yeah, and that's bred the loyalty, because Apple customers are super loyal.
Yeah. I argue that they're prisoners, but both of my daughters have Apple, and I have Apple stock.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'm an Apple girl all the way. I call myself gadget girl all the time because I have so many gadgets, and most of them are Apple.
Yeah.
So, and Apple did not pay me for that little plug there either.
Nor did they pay me for that electric toothbrush.
Exactly.
But up, you guys are my witnesses.
If they come up with it, yeah. You heard it here first, folks. Fred's idea. Fred, what is next for you? And maybe Idea Pros, or maybe you want to separate that into you personally or Idea Pro.
Well, with Idea Pros, we still have a long journey ahead of us, because as I started this company, as I said previously, we only had this kind of flagship product, all in co-founder. And there are a whole lot of entrepreneurs that need help at some level. And once you decide to be an entrepreneur, even if you fail miserably the first time and you go back to corporate America, you're going to come back out. And so we want to create this kind of umbrella that really addresses entrepreneurship from the very nucleus all the way through larger companies that need strategic consulting advice. So there are a lot of programs, a lot of new solutions that we're building with Idea Pros, and that's going to keep me busy for a while. In fact, we're out raising capital right now, in what hopes to be our last round before we would think about going public within the next couple of years. But so that's a big journey. But I think one of the big things for me personally, find a way to balance my life a little bit. I tell everybody else to do it, and I do spend the first hour of my day or more trying to take care of me, working out, meditating, things like that. But I'm working 10, 12 hours a day and working on the weekends, and I got to find a way to calm down and relax a little bit. Maybe make 3 months of the year working out of Italy. Might not be
that's a great idea. I just went to Malta, and I worked from Malta when I was there, so I think it's a fabulous idea.
Yeah.
Well, Fred, thank you so much for this great conversation. I've just thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you. I did as well. And I'm looking forward to crossing your path again.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to get you to come speak at Furman.
I would love to do that. I think that if you can educate people early enough, one of our partners, client partners, actually had double MBAs from prestigious schools before she came and decided to work with us. And she said in the first 6 months of working with me, she'd learned more in both of those programs together. So happy to speak to young people and try to let them know what they're getting into and let them know how to deal with the fires ahead.
That does it for this episode of the Class E podcast. Remember, this is the podcast that's brought to you through a partnership between the Hill Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship and the Communication Studies Department here at Furman University. Remember, you can catch the podcast 2 ways now, wherever you listen to your podcast. And also, we have a brand new YouTube channel that you can watch the podcast. So you can go to YouTube and check that out as well. Of course, it's just under the Class E podcast channel. To make sure that you don't miss an episode, make sure that you hit that subscribe button to YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. This episode and most of our episodes are produced by student producers. Currently, Isabella Martinez is our student producer, so she will have created this podcast for you. We want to thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Mary Sturgill. Until next time, everybody, dream big.